car. Oh, thank you for recording. Sorry, guys, I always forget to do that. You can get into the car and you can start driving, and you can do you ever get into the car and drive somewhere, and then once you've gotten there, you really have no idea how you got there? You're you don't even remember the drive because you were preoccupied and thinking about something else. That's because your body creates a homeostatic norm, like a central nervous system patterning, in order just to move you through your life every day. So what happens whenever you start to do this work and you start to have perceptual shifts, and you start to shift the way you think about things and look at things, the way you see things, you start to notice things in the world, notice things about yourself, notice things about your colleagues and whatever. You start to notice that things are different. And that actually requires, believe it or not, a lot of energy, because you're not seeing things the way you used to see them. Your body is expending more calories now trying to figure out this new way of being. Just like if you were to go to a new country or to an airport, or you're traveling and you have all of these new sights and sounds and experiences coming at you, it's a lot more tiring because you're going into sensory overload and you're taking in a lot more visual data. That's exactly what is happening at the minute. You guys are taking in a lot more data. You're taking in data visually, you're taking it in auditorily, you're taking it in somatically. You're maybe not tasting it, but you might be tasting food differently, who knows? But a lot of it as well is that's why kids are so our kids are so tired all the time. That's why toddlers need to nap, and young children get tired easily, because everything in the world is new to children. So they're, especially to young babies or toddlers or children, everything is new. They're taking in new data constantly. And so that's why they get tired a lot, because the body is going into sensory overload. So that is what's happening here a lot as well, which is why you guys will be tired this week. And one of the best things that you can do is allow yourself to sleep, because your brain integrates all the new material that you learned while you're sleeping. And then you wake up and you feel better, and sometimes you feel tired, or sometimes you feel more refreshed. But it does take a while for this kind of work to really sink into the brain. So if you're tired this week, cut yourself a little slack and don't worry about it too much. Okay. Today, day 4, self-sabotage masterclass. The name of today's class is Knowledge is Power. And I thought long and hard about what was going to be the best thing to teach today, because really self-sabotage is what we call the content of what happens, but it's not the process of how it happens. The process of how it happens is everything that I have been teaching you over these last 4 days. It's about understanding why you're choosing and where you're choosing. It's about understanding, being at cause. It's about understanding about slowing down, the processes of your life, and developing more self-awareness. So that's the process of how you overcome self-sabotage. So self-sabotage is the content of how you do it, but the process of overcoming self-sabotage is down here. It's so much deeper. And it's not really something that can be overcome in a 4-day workshop. You can start to overcome self-sabotage. I genuinely hope that as you move away from today, that you will have had perceptual shifts that will change the way that you think and behave and the decisions that you make. But you're not going to overcome self-sabotage from coming to a 4-day workshop, just like you are not going to have the body of your dreams from doing a 4-week shred. It's just not going to happen. It's going to take a lot longer, and it's going to take work and patience and persistency. But that's a good thing, because anything worth having should be work, because therefore it is more worth the earning in that case. Let me just put my phone on do not disturb, so it do not disturbs my computer as well. So anything worth having should be earned, because then you really do feel like it's a part of you. So whenever I was thinking about what I was going to teach today, there's so many things that I could go into that would help you with self-sabotage, but I've chosen what I've chosen today because I think that it's going to be a good next step for you to move on from here. One thing I want to encourage you just before we get into the content, while we're waiting for everyone to get on, is I want to encourage you to think of today and these last 4 days as kind of like the first day of the transformation of your whole self, if you like. This is hopefully something I'm going to be able to help you guys with, because I do hope that we're going to continue with these workshops. So, and, continue with them on a weekly basis. But I really want you to make a commitment to yourself that you are going to develop greater self-awareness and a deeper sense of self, because that is where all of the answers to all of your problems lie, not just in self-sabotage. Any issue that you are having in your life at the minute that you're unhappy with, any situation that you're unhappy with, is caused by you. And that is not a blame, that is just fact. And the reason why I say that is because if you recognize how you got yourself there, you can look at how you can get yourself out of it. If you're a victim, if you make yourself into a victim and you blame other people, then you are completely stuck. But if you look at how you caused yourself to be in this situation that you're unhappy with in any area of your life, then you can take steps to get out of it. And that was probably the most powerful piece of information that I learned whenever I started to do this kind of work, like I said, 20 years ago. Once I remember, and I'm going to talk about it a bit today, that I used to be such a know-it-all. She says, used to be such a know-it-all, definitely still am, but I'm a little more humble with it now. But I used to be like a real know-it-all and have loads of like right, wrong issues. And I remember, but I used to blame a lot as well. People who are know-it-alls and people who don't like to be wrong, love to blame other people. And whenever I learned, I don't know how many years ago now, that I remember just having this massive aha moment that this situation that I was unhappy with, whatever it was, where I found myself, once I looked at how I caused it and that I could make changes to at any time I wanted to move out of it, it was just like a whole new world of possibility opened up to me. And I began to look at every single situation in exactly the same way. I would ask myself, how am I responsible? How did I cause this? How did I end up here? Any situation that I find myself, like even if it was getting like a speeding ticket, I would be like, oh God, it's so annoying, got a speeding ticket. But I would never say, oh, that was so unfair. Or if I hadn't been, Ryan, if you hadn't have asked me to pick you up from the gym, then I wouldn't have got that speeding ticket. That's just a blame. Okay. That's just me trying to navigate responsibility. The reason why I got a speeding ticket was because I chose to pick Ryan up from the gym. I chose to leave late. I chose to go faster than the speed limit. And I chose to pretend that I couldn't get caught, or I chose to ignore the fact that there might be speed traps along the way. All of these decisions are the thing that led me to getting a speeding ticket. Whenever you start to apply it to the tiniest facets of your life and into the larger parts of your life, like how come I'm in a marriage that I am unhappy in? What am I choosing? What comforts am I choosing that's causing me to stay in this marriage? So you take it onto a bigger level, or you take it right down to a macro level. Why am I drinking coffee from a white cup when I would prefer a gray one? It's not like, well, Natalie brought it to me in a white cup, so it's her fault. Well, no, it's not. Like, it's if I want a coffee in a different cup, I have to speak up. So once you start to see this in all areas of your life, it really does transform everything. So today, as I said, we're going to talk about knowledge, and knowledge is power. That's the title for today. But as you know, it's not going to go exactly as you think it's going to go. So let's just unfold it and see where we get. So what I've written here as well is, which I just talked a little bit about, this series is not designed to solve all your problems in 4 days. It is not the shred version of self-sabotage. It is designed to open the door into consciousness and self-reflection. The only way to transform self-sabotage really is to develop a self-awareness, and it's a daily, consistent battle. Anyone who works for me or is close to me will tell you that I am voracious in my appetite to find out what makes me tick, why I'm angry, why I'm sad. Like I had to meet with my coach last night because I realized that somebody had said to me, a person close to me had said to me, oh, make sure you record these sessions because I would love to watch them. And that then triggered a fear in me. I was like, oh shit. And I didn't even realize. I just had like, oh my God, I want this person to see it. And at the time I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's going on there? And so I mulled over it for a few days. And then I had a session with my coach last night. And I said to her about it. I was like, okay, I have something I need to work on. I said, this person said this to me. She wanted me to record them. I wanted to see them. And I instantly got fearful. And we worked the fear, and we brought it right back to an issue of when my dad teaching me mathematics whenever I was younger, and then getting angry with me because I wasn't able to get it. And so I am on a daily, persistent, consistent battle to overcome my own limitations that stop me from being successful. Because the more you can dig into where your fears are, where your limitations are, where your blind spots are, where you can't even choose something. Like if I had a situation this morning with a person who works with me, and I'd said, well, what about doing this? She was like, no, I could never do that. And I was like, okay, that points to a disintegration. Because whenever you say, oh no, I could never do that, you can't even consider it as an option. You're like, absolutely not. Could never have that conversation because no, this person wouldn't take it well. I'm like, okay, well, you've shut down that as an option, which means that there's fear there. And anytime you choose fear, you're literally cutting off all of your options. So it is a daily consistent battle to figure out, where are your fears? Where are your anger points? Where are your limitations? Where are you choosing fear over what is good for you? Where are you choosing fear over love? Because we do it every single day. But if you can figure out where you do it, it's the secret and the key to being more successful in your life. And I'm testament to that. I don't sit here saying these things lightly. I have built a multi-million-dollar global company. I have, an incredible team of people that I've recruited to come work with me. I have, achieved a lot in the bodybuilding world. I've achieved a lot in the horse riding world. Anything I set my mind to, I can achieve. And it's not because I'm stronger than you or smarter than you or more intelligent than you. It's because I constantly look for the things that hold me back and the things that limit me and the things that stop me from being my best self. And that truly is the key to overcoming self-sabotage and the key to being successful. Knowing yourself and why you do what you do and identifying the patterns of behavior that keep you stuck is the only way to completely transform your behavior. You cannot change or control other people. You can only change and transform yourself. And think about just how hard it is to do that, right? Do you ever think about how much emotional energy we invest in trying to change other people, trying to change our husbands or our mothers, or saying, I just wish you could be different, or, or silently punishing someone, hoping that the silent punishment will be so uncomfortable for them that they will notice what it was that they did and then they will change. Now, I know nobody here does this, certainly not me, ever. But, we've heard of other people who do these things, who would, huff, silently punish, or even just go completely off on one, and like have like a rage attack. I've never done that. I don't think I can ever remember a time in my life when I've done that. Other people I've heard of have done those kinds of things. And so we spend all this time trying to change other people, right? But think how hard it is to change yourself. We can't even change ourselves. How the hell are we actually ever going to be able to change other people? Believe me, it's hard to change yourself. It's harder to change other people. We're so much better to try and focus on changing ourselves. I said changing yourself is not about developing better control strategies. I think that's really important to say before we dive into the material today. It's about developing deeper self-awareness so you can make better choices. A lot of people in the Facebook group have been, messaging me and writing things and saying, Kim, I just need some strategies, right? I just need some strategies. If you could just give me a list or a PDF, in fact, a PDF, if you could give me a PDF of things I can do and say to control myself whenever I feel I'm going to self-sabotage, that would just be so helpful. And I'm like, you're completely missing the point. The point here isn't for us to control our behavior, okay? If you try to control your behavior, you're still existing on the surface level, on the content level. You need to go underneath and go to process. It's just like if you have consistent, persistent headaches and you constantly take Advil and you don't look for the root of the problem, you're just masking the effects of a deeper problem. So if you have a deeper problem that's causing you consistent, persistent headaches, you would be better to find out what the root cause of the problem is, so you don't have to keep masking it every day with Advil. So masking your self-sabotage with better strategies or deeper strategies or better control strategies it can work in the short term for sure. But one day, your emotional pain is going to get so big that you're just going to fall completely off the wagon and have an all-out binge. Or you're going to spend so long controlling yourself that you're going to develop some kind of disease in your body. People who with a lot of control tend to hold themselves very stiff and very solid, and they tend to then unfortunately generate disease in their body. There's a whole book called Energy Anatomy about this, which is really, really interesting about how different illnesses develop in different areas of our body depending on the issues that we have. And so I'm not going to get into that here. It's not something I even know a huge amount about, but holding on to your control strategy, controlling yourself all the time really is not the key to a long-lasting, joyful, healthy life. Uncovering the things that underpin these behaviors and make you who you are and drive your behavior is the secret to a long and healthy life. But why is knowledge power? So I wrote here, knowledge really is power and self-knowledge makes you invincible. But why is knowledge power? Because the more knowledge you have, the more you understand cause and effect. And the more you understand cause and effect in reality, the more likely you are to make choices that are good for you. So what I mean by this is that there's cause and effect that happens in reality, as in I pick up this blue highlighter, I take off the top. If I was to suck this blue highlighter, my mouth is going to go blue. Okay. I'm spitting while I'm talking about that. That's cause and effect in reality. Cause and effect, not in reality, is I don't want to have a conversation with my husband about money because every time he talks about money, every time you talk about money to people, they get angry. You're like, well, no, that's not cause and effect in reality, because there's many people you can talk to about money and they don't get angry. Conversations about money do not cause anger. Do you see what I mean? So that's a cause and effect based on a disintegration. In my world, because every time I talked about money, every time my parents talked about money, they argued, then that I made that cause and effect. Conversations about money create conflict. So as I grow up and I go around my life, I avoid having any conversations about money because conversations about money create conflict, right? Well, no, that's not cause and effect in reality. That's cause and effect based on disintegration. So all of us have an intellectual understanding of the world right now, okay? And we all have an understanding of right and wrong and good and bad. Okay, I said that completely wrong. I'm going to go back to the start. All of us have an intellectual understanding of the world, of right and wrong and good and bad. So we have an intellectual understanding. So I know that stealing is bad, but sometimes I steal. I know that lying is bad, but sometimes I lie. I know that being a kind and considerate and thoughtful person is good, but sometimes I'm a bitch, right? So we have an intellectual understanding of these things, but we don't always act that way. But this intellectual understanding only motivates us to act if it doesn't have a dark side that sabotages us. And the dark side, or the disintegrated side, unfortunately doesn't understand true cause and effect. So this is why you self-sabotage, because your dark side wants to sabotage you. This is all going to make sense in a wee minute. I know I've gone very deep very quickly, but bear with me. True knowledge is that which runs deep and is visceral and is based around reality and data outside of opinion. And it's this that you should aim for first and foremost in order to overcome self-sabotage. So what I mean by this is what, whenever a person is whole or integrated, then their behaviors match their belief. So when I have a true understanding or a true knowledge of the effects of speaking ill of people, I'm using very simple examples. Or if I know how damaging it is to eat aspartame, okay? Aspartame is absolutely 100% banned in my household. It's like poison. In my opinion, it's the studies that have been done on the effects of aspartame, especially on unborn babies in the developing brain and on cancer. You can disagree with me if you want, but if you look into the research, aspartame is one of the worst things that you can ever possibly eat. And so in my house, aspartame is banned. So I have a deep understanding of the effects of aspartame. So therefore, in my house, we don't eat aspartame. Cause effect. Okay. So whenever you have a deep understanding of that, you can act accordingly. It's not like, oh, well, sure, you can have it this once. Oh, you got a Coke Zero. Oh, that's fine. Sure, just drink it this once anyway. My kids are like, does this have aspartame? It does. Not going to choose it. Set it down. There's no like, oh, I wish I could have it. Or maybe I'll have it when no one's looking. Maybe I'll sneak into the kitchen, have it. Maybe I'll sneak it into the house when mommy's not there. They understand. Aspartame, it's a no-go. Their behavior matches their beliefs. That's what we're always aiming for. So what kind of knowledge should we actually be aiming for? So I'm going to tell you a story to illustrate this. I remember whenever I was about 20, I guess. This is really, I guess, what started my whole journey into self-knowledge. What spawned it was about 20 or 21 maybe. And I was 21, 22. I was dating a guy. And I was managing a restaurant in actually a local hotel. And so I didn't really get consistent days off. I got days off all over the place. And I was working about 80 hours a week. Sometimes I stayed in the hotel because we were so short in staff. And I got up for breakfast. I worked a late shift and then I stayed in the hotel and then I got up for breakfast. And so I was always kind of, whenever I had days off, I really wanted to just like get away and chill out and relax. And so my boyfriend and I decided at the time to go and stay in my aunt's house that she had by the beach. Now, when I say by the beach, you're maybe picturing beautiful, long, white, sandy beaches, like you would see in Florida or in Brisbane in Australia. No, this was Clocky Beach. Anyone from Northern Ireland will know Clocky Beach. It's very small. It's got a lot of pebbles, a lot of seaweed. It's a bit choppy. It's only sunny about 3 days a year. But even still, we're in Northern Ireland and it was a beach and we decided to go and stay in the house. So we thought we'll go to the beach, we'll go to like the local fishing town, we'll get some fresh fish and some prawns because I had meat at the time. We'll go to the local pubs and we'll have a really good time. So I imagined, I had in my head this vision of going to this beach house and how lovely it was going to be and these long lazy days. And I forgot that it was like February, so it wasn't even going to be warm. But anyway, we again, I think this is cause and effect and reality not really registering with me. In my mind, I was seeing white sandy beaches, sunshine, nice weather, eating prawns, dipped in garlic butter. The reality was it was February in Northern Ireland and the weather was shit. So anyway, got to the beach and got to the house, went into the house, got everything sorted. They didn't go there very often. I looked around. It was like, where's television? No television. No television anywhere. Not one television in the entire house. No Sky TV, no television, no nothing. It's like, or cable TV as it was back then. It's like, oh shit. So I thought, what are we going to do all the time? There wasn't like smartphones. There wasn't like YouTube or anything then. YouTube didn't exist. We all had those analog phones. So we kind of hung around for a day. Yeah, we went to the pub, we went for lunch, kind of did whatever we could do in February in a shitty, in a shitty beach in Northern Ireland. And we go back to the house and I was like, oh my God, okay, I am bored. Like I'm gonna have to find something to do. So I went searching around the house for something to read. I was like, there must be a magazine or a book. Like maybe I can get lost in a good novel, right? Looked for novels, looked for magazines. There was nothing in the house, no reading material. In fact, but in one of the bedrooms, in the bedside cabinet, I found 2 books, right? One was on improving your golf swing because it was beside a golf club because my auntie and uncle were big golfers. One was how to improve your golf swing. I'd never picked up a golf club in my life. I was not about to read how to improve your golf swing. And the other one was a book called 8 Weeks to Optimum Health by Andrew Biel, who was like a German guy, obviously, clearly by the name. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is the only decision. This is the only reading material I have. I have like a book on golf or 8 Weeks to Optimum Health. Like I was 21. I had no interest in optimum health, right? My glutes were high and tight and my stomach was flat and I ate whatever I wanted and drank whatever I wanted. And I had loads of energy and slept really well, had no aches and pains. Optimum health was not on my radar, but starved of reading material, I decided to dive into this book. So I started to read this book. And from the first couple of pages, I was super, super interested. And I was like, this is so interesting because Andrew Biel began to explain things to me that I had never, ever, ever even known or perceived. Kind of like I'm doing with you guys in this workshop. You're probably learning a lot of things. You're like, I've never thought of this way. I've never thought of this way. So even though it's completely new to you, hopefully it's interesting. And he began to explain, there was like a whole chapter on water and about the chemicals in our water and the effects of the chemicals in our water and how if you drink tap water from your house, you should turn on the taps every morning for 5 minutes and run all of the taps out, run all the water out of the pipes and the taps in your house because of the contaminants in the taps and in the pipes and about how you should never sleep with electric clocks beside your bed. And he talked about loads of different supplements and the effect of selenium and vitamin C. And it was all about food and health and supplements and the effects of, and this is where I learned about trans fats, he explained everything about how they hydrogenate fats, what they do with hydrogenated fats, why they're damaging to the body, how they change the molecular structure of the body, how they're cancer causing. He explained so many things. And I was absolutely and utterly engrossed. And from that day forward, with all of this new knowledge that I had, I became an information junkie about the body and about health and about the effect of foods and all of the stuff that they put in your foods in the supermarket. It had never occurred to me to walk into a supermarket and pick up a packet of something I was about to buy and read the label on the back, read the ingredients. I had never even considered it. As far as I was concerned, the government wouldn't let it be in the supermarket if it contained something that was harmful for you, right? See, all of this information, or I think what I got from that mostly actually just thinking about it now was up until that point, I had never considered that my health and the choices that I made for my body were actually 100% my responsibility. I had just assumed that if it was in a packet on the supermarket shelf, well, it was deemed suitable for human consumption. So I shouldn't question it, right? I mean, it wouldn't be there if it wasn't safe. So I think that this is what school teaches a lot of us, is to take information on good faith and just accept it. And he said, you should never, ever pick up a food packet in a supermarket and never buy it if it has one ingredient or more in the ingredients list that you don't recognize the name of. And that has kind of been a mantra for me for the rest of my life. So anyway, my point is, up until this point, I actually, go to my stories now, I actually had never considered, I had never had any knowledge of all of these different things and how they affected my body. But once I got the knowledge, my whole perception changed, and I couldn't look at food or water or the human body or supplements or any of these things the same way again. And my behavior changed. Now, did it change overnight? Well, yes, because I started to make better choices, but it didn't like transform overnight. I didn't like morph into this incredibly healthy, amazing, 21-year-old. I began to make changes incrementally every single day that were better for my health based on the knowledge that I had from the book. And so that is one thing that happens whenever you start to get solid, consistent, data-driven, science-backed knowledge about the world. It doesn't have to be science-backed, but once you start to get consistent data about the world, that this thing is bad for you, once you've looked into the studies of aspartame and what they do to the body, someone can say to you, oh my God, you shouldn't drink aspartame, it's really bad for you. And you'll be like, oh, really? Is it? Well, that's interesting. But then once you see once you look into these studies and you see the irrefutable evidence of aspartame causes cancer, you're like, holy shit, I could never, ever take aspartame ever again. But until you see it for yourself, you can't change it. And so one of the things I want you to do as you come away from this workshop is I want you to start becoming information junkies. I want you to start reading more, researching more, looking more. The thing that you want to transform, someone telling you that you should do this thing never, ever, ever changed anyone's behavior ever before. What changes your behavior what changes human behavior is having knowledge and power and integration. And what happens when we read a material that clicks with us is we integrate something. The reason they say that, not the reason they say, I remember seeing a quote the other week and it said, if slaughterhouses, I don't know who's vegan here or vegetarian or not. I don't judge you if you're not in any way. But one of the things they said was if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everybody would be vegetarian. And it's true, because people are like, oh no, I don't want to see the animals suffering. Oh, I can't look at it. But they'll sit and eat a big beef burger because they've lost the connection between the slaughterhouses and the suffering and the beef burger. But the thing is, once you see the suffering with your own eyes, it's very hard to look at that beef burger in the same way again. But most of us just want to close our eyes to it. And this is what you're all doing with self-sabotage. You're like, slaughterhouses, self-sabotage. Not sure where she's going with this. You don't want to see really what's going on because either you want to keep the behavior, like, but I love burgers and I don't want to not eat them. And I'm afraid if I really look at how that cow came to be inside my burger bun, then I wouldn't choose it anymore. And then I won't have what I want because I love beef burgers. They're my favorite thing. And I don't want to not eat them. So I don't want to look at that information. And that's what you're all doing with self-sabotage. But I love cookies. I don't really want to look at this thing over here that's going to make me not have cookies, because what if I don't get the cookies anymore? But the funny thing is, you're looking at a future non-disintegrated self from a current disintegrated pattern. You love the thing so much, you can't imagine not loving it. You can't imagine being without it. And so you can't even imagine why you would want to get over this thing to not have this thing, because you love this thing so much and you feel so attached to it. Okay. But you have to be really, really honest with yourself about the self-sabotage and be like, do you actually truly, really want to overcome it? Because if you do, you're going to open your eyes. You're going to peel back the curtain. You're going to look at all of the things that are bad about what you're doing. Or, I mean, one of the ways I would suggest you to overcome self-sabotage, if it's an eating thing, if you're just like, I just can't not eat the food, I would suggest that you start a persistency of picking up every single item of food that you're going to eat and reading the label on the back to see what's in it. And if there are ingredients that you don't recognize, Google them and find out where they came from, because you will find there are things like crushed ants in your jelly sweets that you're eating, if that's one of your things that you love to eat. Or you'll find corn syrup, or what are all the other syrupy things, like all these different processed sugars that they're putting inside these, sweet treats that we're eating. If you look up the effects of corn syrup on the body, you're like, oh my God, once you see the effects of these things and what they're doing to your body, it makes it very hard to choose it again. But the problem is we're closing our eyes to what's really going on, just like people are closing their eyes to slaughterhouses and hoping to God that the animals are being killed humanely. Newsflash, they're not being killed humanely. There is no humane way to get a pig to your plate as bacon. None. So, but we want to pretend that we want to pretend the food we're eating isn't hurting us. We want to pretend the behaviors that we're doing isn't hurting us. We want to pretend that the slaughterhouses are killing, animals humanely. And this is turning into like an animal rights thing. And I didn't mean for it to be, because I'm not preachy in that way. But we want to pretend all these things aren't hurting us because we're not willing to go out and get the data. Now, the difference from someone who is willing to get the data, and I have the greatest amount of respect for someone who says, you know what? I've been to a slaughterhouse. I've seen what happens. It's horrible, but didn't change me. I'm still going to eat the burger. I have the utmost respect for someone who's willing to do that, because at least they're willing to get the data to make an informed decision. My husband worked in an abattoir for one day when he was younger. He didn't last more than one day because he said it made him sick to his stomach, but he still eats a steak when we go out to a restaurant. That's all he eats. He doesn't eat any other meat ever, apart from one steak. So he has made a huge amount of changes, but he still just wants to eat that steak. And I fully respect his right to, because he has been to a slaughterhouse and he's seen what happens in order for it to make it to his plate. Same as alcohol. People always say to me, but you're so healthy and you're the sculpted vegan. But yet I see you every weekend on your Instagram drinking champagne, and alcohol is bad for you. And I say to him, you're right, it is. You're right. Alcohol is bad for you, if, depending on your definition of bad. But I am more than happy to drink the alcohol because I know every single thing, as far as I have been willing to research it, that happens to your body when you drink alcohol. And I've decided that the upsides of me drinking alcohol are worth the potential downsides. I've evaluated the decision, and I drink alcohol on the weekend, and I do it mindfully. I don't throw half a bottle of wine into me as quickly as possible, pretend that it's not happening, and then wake up in the morning and beat myself up. And if I ever have a hangover or a slightly fuzzy head from drinking alcohol, I'm never like, oh, I can't believe I did that. Oh, I feel so awful. I don't suffer over it. I'm like, oh, wow, here we are. Here's the effects of those choices that I made yesterday. There's no point in suffering over it because I expected them, and I walked into it mindfully. So every single time I make a decision, every time I like, even drinking coffee, people are like, I can't believe you drink coffee. It's so unhealthy. I'm like, well, health isn't my highest value. And they're like, really? But you run a health and fitness company. I'm like, well, that may be so, but I'm always deciding in the moment. I'm always weighing up one value against another. But getting the data of what you're doing is the way you transform any negative behavior. Don't close your eyes to what's happening. Become an investigative journalist, okay, of your own life. What is in all that food you're putting in your mouth? How does alcohol affect the body? How does 1 glass of wine affect it? How does 5 glasses of wine affect it? How does 5 glasses of wine every day affect it? Whatever this thing is that you're considering doing or you want to do, go and get the data and make the decision. Then you can decide if you're willing to put up with the effects of your decisions or not. Because the problem is we're making all these decisions and then we don't like the effects, or we're pretending the effects don't happen, or we're pretending we didn't make the decision in the first place because we don't like the effects are not happening, and we're just keeping ourselves completely stuck because we're not actually willing to go out and get the data. But one thing you have to be careful of when you get the data, because I've seen this happen to other people as well. No one on this call, of course, those other people who didn't make it here to this self-sabotage masterclass. What can happen sometimes, and I don't know whether you've ever seen other people do this. I see it happen a lot with veganism, where whenever you go out and you get the data and you're like, oh my God, I can never, ever eat meat again, ever. Just can't do it because those poor animals are suffering and I just can't have it anymore. And I've decided I can never, ever, ever eat meat again. Good for you. But then what happens to this person sometimes? Well, they become just a wee tiny bit punishing to the other people who want to continue to eat meat and live their best lives. We all know these people, don't we? Not us, other people. It's like people who quit smoking and then become the most punishing non-smoker that exists. Or the people who become the vegans who are like, do you know how that animal died to get to your plate? Do you know how much animals suffer in order for you to enjoy that burger? And you're like, I just wanted to enjoy my burger in peace. I don't really like Kim as a friend anymore. Can I not come for dinner with her anymore? So I used to do this with with everything that I ever took on, right? Because even though I was going and I was getting the data and I was really, really knowledgeable and invested, somehow I believed that all this knowledge I had made me right, because I had a bit of a right-wrong problem when I was younger. And you see, the reason why I had a right-wrong problem is because I was brought up in a household where there was a right way to do everything. I was telling someone about this the other day. I was like, my father was obviously very punished as a child, very controlled as a child. And he believed that there was a right way to do everything. There was a right way to fold the Kleenex to blow your nose. I'm not even kidding. We had a tissue box behind the TV. And if you wanted to blow a tissue and you took the tissue out of the box and you went to like just hold it to blow your nose, Dad would be like, no, 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 wait, no, let me show you how you do it. Let me show you. And he would get the Kleenex and he would like, no, you fold it in and then you fold it in half again. And then you go to the very end and you blow your nose and then you fold it in half and then you turn it over and then you use the other side. And if there's still some Kleenex left that you can use later, you fold it up neatly and you put it in your pocket. And then there's no waste, because no waste was very important when we were younger. In fact, it was so important that it was punished into us on a daily basis. My dad used to teach us how many squares of toilet roll to use whenever we were on the toilet. 2 squares for a pee, 3 squares for a poo. You're allowed to use another 3 squares if it was a really messy one. But if you could make do with 2, that was even better. He's laughing. I can hear one of the girls pissing themselves. You see, you've all had this, right? So this is the kind of household I grew up in. So I believe there was a right way to do everything. There's a right way to load the dishwasher. There's a right way to, use toilet paper. There's a right way to fold a Kleenex. There's a right way to mop a floor. There's a right way to brush a yard. There's a right way to get dressed. There's a right way to put up your hair. There's a right way to do everything. So then once I had decided that this was the way I was going to do things, I became the most evangelical, annoying bitch you've ever met in your entire life. So once I read 8 Weeks to Optimum Health, I would then go out for dinner with people and I would say, do you know how many carbohydrates are on your plate? Do you know how many minerals are in this? Do you know how the effects of these decisions that you're making are harming your body? And my friends would say, you know what, Kim, I really don't give a shit. And I need you to stop right now, because anytime I embarked on something, I needed it to be right so much that I went around punishing everybody else for not doing the thing that I was doing. And it was the same whenever I turned vegan, right? I would point out to everybody the death on their plate and the stats. It wasn't really about the death for me more. It was more about, do you know that dairy is causing you heart disease? Do you know the statistics of dairy and casein, and how casein is the #1 protein in milk, which actually contributes to cancer? And if you read the China study, you're going to get all the stats about it. And people were like, dear God, make her stop. Please make her stop. I don't know how my family ever put up with me. And so you have to be careful when you get the knowledge that you don't flip over to this side, because this side points to, you got it, a disintegration, a fear. Anytime you want to punish someone else for doing any kind of behavior, it's because there is a fear underneath it. Where am I going with this? Because although I had more data, I had not integrated this new knowledge into my whole being. I hadn't given myself the grace to try something out and fail while doing it. For there were times when I slipped up and I ate cheese or chocolate or all the delicious things that I had enjoyed for 35 years of my life before I turned vegan. But rather than recognize the humanity in this, I hid the fact that I was imperfect, because God forbid anyone would ever find out that I was not perfect. Because I was only willing to show the world the bright, shiny, new, vegan side of myself. Yep, I identified as vegan, and God forbid that anyone would see me as anything else. Because really, I was only willing to show myself this side of myself. Okay. So it's like all you guys who start on a fitness program and you go, I am now on the extreme body makeover program. And Kim Constable has said that when I do one of her programs, I am an athlete. So therefore I am now the kind of person who goes to the gym every day. And I get up in the morning and I do my cardio and I meal plan and I only eat healthy food. And this is now who I am. And then one day you're looking at a big piece of cheesecake and the other part of yourself that you're denying says to you, is this really who we are now? And you're like, yes, it is. Yes, stop. Are you sure? Because that cheesecake looks mighty delicious. No. So you go onto this controlling side of yourself, right? But still this little part of yourself that you're denying and pushing down and who is just begging to be heard won't fucking go away, right? Won't go away until one day this little part of yourself is so pissed off with being ignored. She like muscles her way in, beats you up a bit, grabs the cheesecake and shoves it in your mouth. And then you're like, I just don't know what happened. I just sabotaged myself and I fell off the wagon and I had all the food for the whole day. No, it was that you spent, the problem isn't that you fell off the wagon and sabotaged for the whole day. The problem is that you spent the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, months, 4 months, 6 months, however long you lasted before, squashing down the part of yourself that is imperfect. And had you just let that little part of yourself that's imperfect have a little bite of cheesecake every now and then, or if you had to just let her have a cigarette every now and then, or if you had to just let her, at least acknowledged her and said, I hear you, I love you, but I can't give you what you want right now, but I recognize that you're there. And see, when we're finished this shred, I'm going to give you everything you want for 2 days. 2 days, really? 2 days. You and me, girl, we're going to binge together. We're going to eat all the food. It's going to be fun. Okay, I can wait till the end of the shred and we'll give you 2 days. Do you see the difference? I'm not denying this part of myself, pretending it doesn't exist and shoving it down and then beating the hell out of myself when it pops up. I'm acknowledging her. I'm giving her credit. I'm saying, I recognize that you exist, but I don't think that you're serving us right now. So I can't let you come to the forefront. But if you really, really, really need it, I'm going to consider it, right? I might give you a slice of cheesecake every now and then, even though we're on a shred, because I know it's going to keep us moving towards our goals in the long run. I was denying the dark, imperfect side of myself that messed up and got things wrong. My need to be right kept me very rigid in my decisions and actions, and rigidity will kill all of your dreams. So why do we do this? Is it just me who does this? Anyone else here do this? Put up your hand. Yeah, you're all doing too. Okay. We do it because of these little big things that we're all familiar with called emotions. Here's why we do it. Where do emotions come from? So this is a whole module in and of itself. And whenever I was writing this, I was like, how far am I willing to go here into emotions? Because well, obviously we're going to run out of time at some point. But basically, emotions are hardwired into our body. Okay. We cannot live without emotions. We've talked a little bit about stimulus response patterns, and we've talked about the freedom lies in the capacity to pause between stimulus and response, but we haven't really figured out what this is and what this means. So stimulus is something in the outside world happens. Anything from like, there's cars going past my window, right? There's sunlight coming in, the window's open, so there's a slight breeze. There's, I'm sitting here at a desk and it's hard. There could be a bang. Rachel, I think, just laughed a minute ago and I heard it, right? Those are stimuluses, okay? So a stimulus, something happens in the external world and my body registers the stimulus. So I either register it visually, auditorily. I was trying to think of all the different ways today. Your smell is olfactory. You've got your taste, and you've got kinesthetic is how it feels in your body, and somatic is, I think, how it feels with your hands. Like I said, I didn't really research this very much or look into it, but there's different ways that we register stimulus in the body. And then when that stimulus comes in, our body generates an emotion. So first of all, it generates hormones. There's loads of different ways. There's, endorphins and serotonin and oxytocin and dopamine, all these different, ways that your body registers pleasure. And then that goes to the amygdala and the brain. And I don't exactly know how it happens, but all I know is stimulus comes in and our response is our body generates an emotion. That's called a stimulus response pattern, right? We are hardwired for survival. So the brain is programmed to seek things that are comfortable and pleasurable and to reject things that are not. We forget that we're animals, right? And we're human and we're hardwired for survival. So the three things that stimulate the pleasure centers of the brain are eating, learning, and sex. And we talked about this the other day. It's normal and natural that these things would stimulate the pleasure centers of the brain because they move us forward as human beings. Even though exercise feels hard in the moment, such as like a really brutal leg day, the benefits are incredible, which is why we get a release of endorphins after we have finished, which makes us come back for more. So we're in the moment and we're thinking, oh my God, I really don't want to do this leg day. Like I try and talk myself out of leg day for 48 hours before it happens. I come up with every excuse under the sun, even as I'm driving to the gym with my children to have this brutal leg day with Mark Getty. In my head, I'm trying to come up with lots of different ways that I can get myself out of it. And then every time leg day is over, I'm like, and I'm thankful it's over because I'm like, oh, it's over for another week. But it feels so good that I showed up for myself and I did the hard thing and I pushed and I'm going to get big legs. And even the pain I feel the next day is a good pain because I know that pain means my muscles have been stimulated and it feels really good. So we as human beings are hardwired for pleasure, not always pleasure in the moment, but pleasure in the long term that moves us closer towards our goals. Even after we give birth, our body releases oxytocin, which is known as the love hormone. Do you ever consider how, if we didn't have oxytocin, we might just give birth to our babies and then just like can you imagine in primitive times you had to give birth to a baby like in the jungle? So like you'd be in the jungle or in the woods or whatever, and you'd go off and you'd be like, give birth to your baby. And then you'd be like, fuck you, I'm leaving you there. Like you just caused me a world of pain. I'm not taking you with me. Like you just like leave the little bastard there in the grass, and go off without it. But and thank God your body knows better and your body releases a flood of oxytocin. So you look and you go, oh, this beautiful bundle of joy that has just caused me so much pain. And you get this rush of love, and that rush of love makes you want to protect the baby and take it with you. So we can do really hard things, and then we can feel and then our bodies are hardwired for survival and obviously and feel good. And so even it's not always feeling good in the moment. Sometimes it's feeling good in the long term. And this is what motivates human beings to act. Oxytocin is also released during sex, orgasm, birth, and breastfeeding. Again, breastfeeding. Anyone here breastfed? How sore is that on your nipples? Like mine were cracked and bleeding, but yet like somehow I still picked my baby up and latched him on and hoped for the best. And you're like, oh, like I remember crying while breastfeeding, but yet I continued to feed my infant. Honestly, I take my hat off to anybody who had mastitis. I never had that, thank God. But anyway, I don't want to digress. Otherwise, we would reject our babies. Okay. So this is why oxytocin is released. Emotions are natural and are a natural and necessary part of being human, but they can get a little messed up in childhood. Okay. We think that we are these integrated human beings walking around with like an intellectual understanding of the world. And sometimes we even like believe our own bullshit. And we believe that we are highly intelligent, evolved human beings with a great sense of the world. And there's nothing more, there's nothing that proves our intellect more than a self-righteous person judging someone else. Well, look at that person spending all her money over there on that frivolity. I would never spend my money on such things because I am a person who is very careful with money, and I only spend my money on things that are worth spending money on, not like those other people over there. No, this is just all how we justify our need to be right to people. So how does this all relate to self-sabotage? Don't you love it the way I like take you off on a wee journey and you're all like, it's really good. I'm totally into Kim's stories and she's a great teacher, but like, hello, like where the hell are we? Luckily, I know where we're going. When we are children, stimulus comes in from the external world and shapes our internal world. As I said earlier in the week, when our parents love and cuddle us and tell us, when our parents cuddle us and tell us they love us, we build a neural connection for this stimulus. So when you cuddle your children, and I tell my children I love them every single day, many, many times a day, and I cuddle them and I kiss them, and even the older boys, they're such huggers and kissers. We have so much love in our family. And so my kids have a really strong connection between this means love, right? And so that a really good, strong neural pathway is built for that. And it's reinforced. And if it's reinforced over time, even better. But there's a flip side, okay, to these emotions. And this is where self-sabotage actually happens. When we are young and we have negative experiences that we cannot make sense of, it can cause disintegrated beliefs. Now, I'm not going to go over this again because we've talked about it a lot this week. And I think you're all good with disintegration. And if you're not, and you're like, oh, I don't know what she's talking about, because I actually haven't watched the replays. I just showed up here for the final day, hoping for the finale. I hope to skip all the work to get the self-sabotage cure. Sorry, ain't going to happen. You're going to have to watch the replays. So I'm not going to go into disintegrated beliefs, but I want you to know that sometimes whenever we're kids and we're building our belief structure, we put together the puzzle pieces correctly. This means love. Yes. This means this. Yes. Stealing is bad. Yes. Lying is bad. Yes. Being courteous and kind and taking care of people is good. Yes. Okay. All of these are consistent, whole, integrated beliefs. But sometimes we put them together incorrectly. And it doesn't only come from punishment, it can also come from experience. This is how it relates to self-sabotage. And when these experiences are negative, the body creates a stimulus response pattern that governs the rest of your life, unless you become aware of it and address it. So let me tell you a story about a friend of mine. She told me this story. I didn't witness it, but she told me it. She was very, very evolved. She was she was part of the NLP company that I was going to run in Belfast many, many years ago. And we were talking about disintegration once, and in specifically as it relates to self-sabotage. And I remember this story the other day, and she said to me at the time, she said, I have a story for self-sabotage, because we were talking to another person in the group who was who was always sabotaging herself. And she said, whenever I was young, no, I'll start off somewhere else. She said she had a problem that as an adult, she really, really, really wanted to meet somebody, meet a man and settle down and have babies. She wanted to be a mother more than anything. She was so nurturing. She was so kind. She was so loving. Like, I adored her. And she really, really wanted to settle down, meet the right man, Mr. Right, get into a relationship and settle down. And so, but she kept getting into these relationships with men, and she'd been in a few serious relationships, and it would seem like he was an amazing person. They were getting on so well. It was great. And then they would get more serious, and then they would move in together, or he would propose or something. But then something would happen to the relationship and she would go off them. Like, the minute they proposed, or after they had been living together for a period of time, or after it appeared they were getting pretty serious and heading towards what it was that she wanted, she would just go off them. And she couldn't understand why, because she knew she really, really wanted this thing, and she couldn't understand why. And up until she began to do a lot of self-development work, a lot of personal work, she had just thought that she just kept meeting the wrong guys. And she was like, I just keep meeting these guys that just aren't right for me. One day I'm sure I'll find Mr. Right. I just keep, meeting these men that just aren't the right men for me. And so then one day, I think someone asked her, is there a feeling that you get whenever she'd just broken up from her previous boyfriend. I remember, like, they were living together. He was a really nice guy. And I went to their house, and they had 2 cats. This is the same friend who had the 2 cats, the really fat one and the really sleek feline one. She was an amazing woman. I went to her house. She was seeing this guy. He was gorgeous and he was successful. He had a really good job, good income. He loved her. He took really good care of her. He loved their cats. They had this beautiful apartment. He was seemingly Mr. Perfect. And they broke up shortly after they moved in together. And she said, I remember at the time being like, what happened? And a friend of ours asked her, said, is there a feeling that you got or you get at some point in the relationship that causes you to want to break up with them? And she was like, yes, there is. And this friend said, describe the feeling. And so she really slowed it down, which is what is required of you to do. She slowed it way, 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 way down. And she put herself back in the position of being, when did it start? I was okay here. I was okay here. Yep. Still loved him here. Yep. Moved in together. It was great here. And then just here, oh, no, things now start to go a bit funny. I look at him now and I'm like, oh, I don't know. For the first time, doubt has creeped into my mind. Okay. And this is what you guys have to do with your self-sabotage. She began to really slow it down. And when she slowed it down, she focused on the feeling she got, which was like an icky feeling. She said it was in her chest and there was like a pressure, and it was just like it was like a fear was how she described it. When she slowed it down, a memory came into her mind and she was like, oh my God. She wrote the memory down and she started to unpack the memory. She started to journal in the memory. And here is what she realized. When she was a little girl, she said about 4 or 5, really young, she always loved cats. And she had her cat, don't know the cat's name, but she loved this cat more than anything. This cat slept in her bed every night. It was like the joy, the love of her life. You know how much like a little kid loves an animal? This is how much she loved this cat. And she lived in quite a volatile household because her parents were both alcoholics. And I think there was a lot of abuse used to happen, like verbal abuse between the two of them. There was a lot of volatility. They were great when they were sober, but if they were drunk, it was bad. If they were drunk together, it was even worse. There would have been fights. Ambulances were called. It was quite a volatile household. And she remembers this one particular morning. Either her parents had been drinking the night before, and so therefore they were in a, hungover the next day, or else had a fight made up. She just remembers they were both in a really good mood. And not in a good mood, sorry, they were in a loving mood. And she said they called her into their bedroom and said, "Come and get into bed with us, Christine." And she was an only child, so it was even harder for her as a child to live in that volatility. So they said, "Come and get into bed with us." And she was never normally invited into her parents' bed, she said. So she got into her parents' bed and she got into the middle of them and underneath the duvet. And she said both of her parents turned to her, and her mum was kissing her on the head, and she said, and her dad was stroking her hair, and they were both being so loving towards her. And she said that she remembers it was the most protected and safe and loved that she had ever felt she can remember feeling in her young life. And she said, and as she lay there, feeling that feeling, her dad told her that her cat had been run over and died. And so, and of course, then it went from being the most loved and supported and cared for she'd ever felt in her life to the worst possible feeling she could ever imagine in her entire life in a split second. Now, obviously, her parents had wanted to soften the blow for her, because even though they were alcoholics and they were limited, they obviously wanted to bring, if I try her parents on, they wanted to bring her into their bed and be there to comfort her when they told her that her cat had been killed the night before. But here's what that did, unknowingly to her parents. Christine realized that every time her body recognized the feeling of being safe and loved and cared for in a relationship, every time that stimulus started to come in, it created a recognition in her body of which reminded her unknowingly of the time she was in bed with her parents, and her body instantly went into fight or flight because the bad thing was coming. She didn't even realize that it was happening, but the minute she felt that feeling, her body went, "Shit, the bad thing's happening. The bad thing's going to happen. The bad thing's going to happen. Quick, stop. And so her body immediately started ringing alarm bells and creating a disconnect between her and her partner. And so she sabotaged the relationship and she ended the relationship over time. She just couldn't get over this feeling. She lived with it every day and she didn't know what it was, but it was the exact same feeling she got after her parents told her cat had died. That's how these kinds of patterns are built whenever we're children. These kinds of patterns govern the rest of our lives. Like I said earlier in the week, we are literally little fucked up kids running around in adult bodies. And do you know the scariest thing about that? Is that people who are running our world, our governments, our presidents, the world leaders are also fucked up little kids running around in adults' bodies, making decisions based on disintegrated belief patterns that are installed whenever we're children. Your self-sabotage isn't always a missing resource. It can be a missing resource, but it can also be something so much deeper. And the only way to uncover it is to slow the process down, to go back to when you were feeling okay to when you were not feeling okay. If you're like, I was doing great on the shred, doing great on my diet, and then suddenly, I don't know what it was, I just had this urge for a cookie. Well, you need to slow that down and say, okay, go back. I was feeling okay here. 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 Oh, hang on. I wasn't feeling okay here. It was when my husband said that thing to me. It was when he commented on my bum looking big in those jeans when I thought that I had lost weight. That's when I stopped feeling okay. A lot of times we think it's here in the moment when I want the cookie, but the time you want the cookie, you're way past usually what it was that caused you to go for the cookie in the first place. You've just been covering it up and denying it for the last few days, months, weeks, hours, whatever. You just weren't aware. So the secret to overcoming self-sabotage is to develop deeper awareness And I do this every single day in my life. If I'm not feeling okay, which is very, very rare because I'm a very happy, joyful person because I've spent 20 years working on my disintegrations, I trace it back to, okay, when was I feeling okay? And when did I stop feeling okay? Because it's not here in the office. Like if I'm feeling bitchy in the office, it didn't happen in the office. It happened somewhere else. But I have to figure out where that was. And then you have to slow it down, focus on the feeling, amp the feeling up and make it stronger. And then a memory will pop into your head. It will absolutely 100% pop into your head if you let it. And sometimes one comes in, you're like, oh no, I don't like that one. You push it away. And then people say to me, I just can't get the memory. And I'm like, no. Something flashed into your head and you pushed it away because you didn't like that one. That's what my coach said to me one day. Didn't like that one? I was like, no, I didn't like that one. She's like, oh, tell me about it anyway. Because they seemingly unrelated, but if you start to journal on that memory, okay, so here's the best thing you can do. You start to write that memory down. You start to write it down with everything you thought, you felt, all of your immature emotion in that memory. You pour it all onto your journal and onto your piece of paper, and you start to evaluate it from your more integrated adult perspective, because you do have this disintegrated part of yourself, which causes you to self-sabotage, but you also have this integrated adult understanding because you've moved around the world for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 plus years. So you have a lot of consistent data and you look back to what you made it mean. In Christine's example, it was, oh my God, she looked at this and she said, I had the most loving, what was that like to have your parents loving you? It felt amazing. It felt great. They loved me. Shit, my cat died. And she was like, oh my God, I have made it mean that when you are the most loved in your life, the bad thing's going to happen. Because it only has to happen once as a child and we make it that way forever. And she was like, these things, this is not cause and effect. Just whenever you're the most loved, it doesn't mean the effect isn't a bad thing's going to happen. But that's what she had made it mean as a child. And so once she saw that, she was able to go, oh my God, this is not true in reality. And I don't have to live my life this way anymore. And I'm happy to say that she's been married now for the last 12 years and has 2 kids. A beautiful little girl and a little baby boy. And I think she has 2 step kids as well. So she has the family she'd always wanted. Once she transformed this, she was able to have what it was she wanted. But this pattern of belief, this belief pattern was holding her back from having it. You self-sabotage for a number of reasons, and it's rarely the same for 2 people. But you have to understand the reason you self-sabotage isn't always you just don't have any self-control, although sometimes it is that. It's usually much deeper. You have to become aware of why you self-sabotage, not by trying to control it, but by setting a goal, working towards it, seeing where the failure is, and then trying to find the missing resource that caused the failure. Is it physical or is it emotional? Like I said, sometimes it's physical, a plan, a piece of data, a pair of sneakers, and sometimes it's emotional, which is caused by a recognition in your body that you're close to danger, such as the cat dying. So I'm the most loved and secure that I've ever been in my life before. Now my cat's going to die. That's not cause and effect. Remember when I told you about my belief that having money meant the bad thing wouldn't happen? Remember I told you a couple of days ago, I had this belief that as long as you have money, the bad thing won't happen. Is it true? No. Do you know how I know? Because there are billionaires at the bottom of the sea in a submarine who will most likely die today. Like, it is horrifying to think of those men stuck in a submarine. And they are some of the richest people in the world. Having money does not mean that you are safe, but that is what I had believed that it meant as a child. And that's how I'd lived my whole life. And I just went and tried to find the easiest way to have this thing that I thought would keep me safe. And I thought the quickest and easiest way would be to marry it. Marry a man with money, date a man with money, marry a man with money. I tried for a while to build it myself. And then I realized, oh, here's a man with money who wants to marry me. This is better. So I went over here to try and have it. And then I realized he's never going to be rich enough for me. He's never going to have enough money to cover up this feeling that I have. So I set about building the Sculpted Vegan so that I could have all this money. But even whenever I had all the money, it didn't take the feeling away. Feeling was still there because you can never cover up the feeling with the thing you think you need. It was only when I started to really dig into it and journal on it and uncover it and figure out what the fuck is going on. What are the fears around here that is holding this together, that I was able to transform it. What we don't realize as adults is that we are being governed by our body feeling, which is not true in reality. And if we can't find the pause between stimulus and response and figure out where the lie is, we have no hope of ever transforming it, and we will remain reactive like animals. So what you have to remember is, if you have made cause and effect in such a way that is not true, there's a lie. So with my friend and her cat dying, she made it mean that whenever you're the most loved in your life, the bad thing will happen. She had these linked as, this causes this. You will be most loved. Being most loved causes the bad thing to happen. I had made it mean having money causes the bad thing never to happen. It's not true. So these things are a lie. So you have to become like an investigator. You're becoming a private investigator and an investigative journalist. You are very, very, very competent people. And so you have to become like a private investigator into your own life and figure out, where are all the lies that I've told myself? Where are all the disintegrated belief patterns that hold my entire belief structure together, that limit me in my life? Because the whole point of this is to overcome your limitations. Self-sabotage is just one limitation, but we have hundreds of limitations that stop us from being our most productive and best selves. It's why I've been able to do what I do. It's why I've been able to be so successful in my life, because I've looked for every single place where I am limited. And I have worked so hard to overcome it. And has it been easy? No, because you have these other people in your life who love you, who don't want you to do this work because it threatens their safety, security, and comfort. If they could just get on board and say, I'm totally on board with all these changes you're making, this diet you want to go on, this work that you want to do, absolutely, I'll look after the kids so you can go out and work. No problem at all. No, doesn't happen that way. You're going to overcome when you start working towards your goals and really stepping out of your comfort zone and growing into your best self. You are going to push buttons of all of those people around you, and they are not going to like it. And all of the bad things that you thought might happen will happen. They will get angry. They will get sad. They will punish you. They will blame you. They might even leave you. These are things that happen when you start operating outside of your comfort zone. Because when you operate outside of your comfort zone, you push other people outside of their comfort zones. Just ask any of these girls here who work for me, and they will all tell you that every single day they come to work for the Sculpted Vegan, they are forced way outside their comfort zone every single day. But that is what is required to work for the Sculpted Vegan, because nothing good ever happened in your comfort zone, ever. So why do we beat ourselves up? Guilt is self-corrective in nature. It happens when we make a decision that we believe is bad or that violates our moral compass. Self-punishment is where we take the guilt and turn it into action. We beat ourselves up in the hope that we'll either change our behavior in the future or abnegate us from the responsibility of the choice we make. So guilt comes from our conscience. I've decided that I am going on a diet and I am going to be healthy because it's a value of mine. But yet, God damn it, I just can't stop eating Oreos because they're so delicious. And so every time I eat Oreos and I go against what it was I said I wanted for myself, I violate my own conscience, and it feels bad and I feel guilty. I'm like, oh, this isn't the kind of person I said I was going to be. I am the kind of person who keeps their word to themselves. Clearly I'm not, but I want to be. So every time I violate my vision of myself, or every time I violate my own values, then I feel guilty. But with self-sabotage, quite often we want to take it one step further, because like, what would be the downside of just feeling guilty? Like, why not just go, oh my God, I feel so guilty for doing that. That is awful. Now I'm going to correct the damage. I'm going to take the Oreos out of the house. I'm going to look at how many calories I consumed. I'm going to burn an extra 300 calories off on the Stairmaster. I'm going to, you could correct yourself without having to punish yourself. But for some reason, we like to indulge in punishing ourselves. Here's why. We beat ourselves up in the hope that it will either change our behavior in the future, i.e., if I beat myself up now, then I will not eat the Oreos again. That ever happen? No. Or it abnegates us from the responsibility of the choice we made. I feel so guilty. Oh my God. I can't believe I did that thing. Oh my God. I can't believe I did that thing. Listen, I know I did that thing. Oh my God. I know. I totally listen. Oh my God. I feel so bad. I feel so, you don't have to tell me because I feel so bad. You don't have to beat me up because believe me, I'm beating myself up enough for both of us. Okay. I need you to see how much I'm beating myself up, because if you just saw how much I'm beating myself up for this, then you're not going to beat me up too. Okay. So it's actually self-protective in nature. We beat ourselves up so that other people won't beat us up, right? Because when we were young, we were punished. Why would it be necessary for us to punish ourselves? Is a beaten you better than a non-beaten you? Often we think it is. As children, we were punished as a way of controlling our behavior, and sometimes it worked. So whenever we were kids, we were punished. Don't do that, don't do this. And if you did that, you were sent to the naughty step. And if you did that again, then you were grounded or sent to your room, or maybe you were spanked, or you were shamed, or you were yelled at, okay? So our parents didn't know how to correct our behavior, like I was telling you I did with my daughter whenever she stole money from me, where it was punishment in integrity. So two of the concepts I introduced earlier in the week were punishment in integrity and punishment out of integrity. So punishment in integrity is where the punishment fits the crime. Punishment out of integrity is, I want to inflict emotional or physical pain on you to stop you from doing what you're doing so I can feel okay. Because I don't feel okay when you're doing this thing, so I need to stop you from doing it now or ever again in the future. And I'm going to punish you and make you feel bad, and in the hope that you will feel bad enough to not choose that anymore. You see, so intrinsically, actually, we understand as humans that humans want to feel good, which is why we punish people, because the hope is the punishment will be worse than not doing it. Sorry, doing it and being punished will be worse than not doing it. So we do actually understand that human beings want to feel good, which is why we punish. So because it worked for us as children, we think that it works for us as adults, right? We weren't taught how to correct the damage. We weren't taught that, oh, okay, you broke this thing or you stole this thing was good. So how can you repair the damage? How can you build back the value that you destroyed? That's not how our parents teach us, right? It's much easier and quicker and much more damaging just to punish the child or the person or your husband or your wife or your friend, whatever. We punish all the time. Unfortunately, we punish ourselves. But punishment, when a child is punished, one of two things happens. Number one, the child becomes fearful and therefore follows the rule and toes the line. We all know these people. They follow the rules, do what they're told, show up on time, do what the government tells them, don't speed. They're the rule followers, right? That's not me. I'm not one of those people. So, but that's one thing that happens when a child is punished. The other thing that happens when a child is punished is the child becomes defiant to the punisher, and either they defy the rule and just like blatantly say, I'm not doing it. Have you ever seen a child who's been hit by their parent and they go, that didn't even hurt? That's defiance, okay? So either they become defiant to the punisher and defy the rule, or they follow the rule, but with a fuck you attitude. We call these fuck you accommodators. You know, these people who go, absolutely, sure, no problem, fuck you. Of course, I will absolutely do that. Fuck you. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Next time, you're 100%, I'll do it that way. Fuck you. So people are either saying fuck you outwardly or they're saying fuck you inwardly. But see, anyone who's smiling and nodding and saying absolutely no problem, they're saying fuck you inwardly, right? Because we all have a defiance pattern because we were all punished as children. So just because somebody is following the rules and smiling and nodding and making it seem like they're doing what they're told doesn't mean they're compliant. It means they're compliant outwardly, but they're defiant inwardly. I would actually much rather have an outwardly defiant person than an inwardly defiant person, because at least you know where you stand with an outwardly defiant person. They are actually a lot more honest than inwardly defiant people. So if you're an accommodator, if you're a yes girl, if you're a yes, okay, no problem at all. Yes, that's fine. Absolutely. I'll do that for you. No problem at all. You're actually, my friend used to go to me, liar, liar, pants on fire. So accommodators are actually the biggest liars of all, believe it or not. People who are willing to offend in order to express their opinion. Not even defiance. Like I am not defiant anymore at all. Maybe I am just a little bit sometimes, but mostly I'm not defiant, but I'm also willing to offend you in order to state my opinion. Even the way I'm teaching here now, I'm risking offending people because what I'm saying is very strong and this is the way it is. And this is how it is. And these are the concepts. And this is the way I believe the world to be. In order to do what I do, you have to be able to risk offending people. But people always say about me, somebody described me one day and I thought it was great. And they said, you know what? At least with Kim Constable, you always know where you stand. You might not like her, but you always know where you stand with her. And it's 100% true. People may not like what you have to say, but they will respect the fact that you're not afraid to say it. Because believe me, I know, even if you're an accommodator and you're saying, yes, sure, no problem at all on the surface, if people are like that with me, I am far more wary of them than people who are outwardly disagreeable. Because someone who's outwardly disagreeable, at least is being disagreeable to your face. And you can deal with that. The people who are nice and agree with everything are saying fuck you in the inside, and they're not being honest. And that's a whole other kettle of fish. It's very, very hard to deal with. And you are this way with yourself around self-sabotage, by the way. Either you're an outwardly defiant of yourself, and you're like, well, fuck you. You won't do that again. I'm going to make life extra hard. We're going to run an extra 5 miles today to make up for those 500 calories that you had. I'm going to beat you and punish you for that bad behavior. Or you're on the inside going, I'm going to pretend that it didn't happen. But you know what? You are the fucking fat, lazy, ugly bitch. You are never, ever, this is your internal dialogue, okay? Punishing yourself internally, but still smiling on the outside, pretending everything's okay. It's because it's important to smile on the outside, pretending everything's okay, just in case anybody thinks that anything's not okay. We're totally okay over here. And inside, your internal dialogue is ripping you apart. Got to be exercise at the end for you, by the way, that's going to help you overcome this. It'll be very hard for you to do, but you're going to love it. Under punishment is always fear. So anytime you feel the urge to punish yourself, you're acting on a disintegration. Punishment is not useful. What is much more productive is figuring out where the fear is and integrating the issue rather than to control it through punishment. So how are we going to wrap all this up? To overcome self-sabotage, you must first identify the reason for sabotage as soon as it happens. So going into some guilt, self-beating, punishment loop is not helpful, okay? It's not helpful. It's not useful. It's never, ever, ever going to help you overcome self-sabotage. The reason why I went through the whole punishment and blame and guilt is because I need you guys to understand it's not useful. Either you're working towards a goal and you failed and now you're missing a resource and you want to figure out what the resource is so you can get back on the proverbial horse and keep going, or you don't want to. Either you want the thing or you don't want the thing, but you have to be honest about whether you want it or not, which is actually the first step to overcoming it. So with this series, we've actually started at the end and worked backwards. So here's what we're going to do. Next time you sabotage yourself, or you have the urge to sabotage yourself, you're going to ask yourself these questions first. There are three main reasons why, and by the way, this is in the PDF download for today, so you don't need to write these down. There are three main reasons why we self-sabotage once we hit a failure, because that's what happens. We fail and then we sabotage ourselves. Number one, it's a strategy called I want to want it. These are things that I come up with. I'm sure there's more, but there's only three that I could think of. I want it, we call this. So either you thought you wanted it or you want to want it. Because when it comes to doing the hard thing to actually achieve it, you choose not to. Not because you're disintegrated, fearful, or a bad person, but once you realized you didn't want it as much as you thought you did, but because you realized you didn't want it as much as you thought you did once you saw what you'd have to do to achieve it. You have to understand that when you have no data, everything is a hypothesis. Once you get the data, you have something more concrete upon which to make informed decisions. So an example of this would be a few months ago, 6 months maybe, my husband and I were watching Queen of the South one Sunday, and he got a phone call from one of our sons who was at the gym, and he said, can you come pick me up? And Dad said, yeah, sure, no problem at all. Ryan said, no problem. So he says to me, I'm just going to pause on this for a minute. I'm going to nip up and collect Kai. I'll only be 20 minutes because the gym's only like 8 minutes away. So I said, great, no problem at all. I'll just wait. So he pressed pause, jumped in the car and went to David Lloyd. Everyone who knows me knows where this is going because it's become a standard joke now in the family and the company. Let me take a drink. Hang on. So I went on Instagram, as you do, Facebook, started flicking through. I think it was on Facebook. And I have wanted to learn Spanish for the longest time because we go to Spain every year and my kids speak fluent Spanish. And whenever we were younger, we had Spanish nannies in the house all the time because I really wanted my kids to have languages. So I chose Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, and Russian, believe it or not. They didn't keep up with the Russian, but they kept up the Spanish and the Mandarin. And they're now completely fluent in Mandarin reading and writing. And They are not as fluent in Spanish anymore because they didn't keep it up. But Kai has gone back to Spanish and now he also speaks French. So we're really into languages in my house. And I wanted to learn. So every time I go away to Spain, because I understand so much Spanish, and I actually have a really good accent because I had it in the house when the kids were younger, like all the time, Spanish nannies. I love the Spanish language. And so I have wanted to learn to speak Spanish for such a long time. And we were watching Queen of the South. And in Queen of the South, they're from Mexico. So even though it was in English, there was a lot of Spanish, accents and Spanish words. And so I was really getting into the Spanish, right? Really inspired by it. So Ryan goes off to the gym to collect Kai. And I'm flicking through Facebook. And this ad comes up and it just caught me, right? Because the copy on it, the text on it says, become fluent in Spanish in under 3 months, complete fluency in Spanish in under 3 months, or your money back. And I'm like, clicked on it. It's exactly what I want, right? I'm watching Spanish. We're watching Queen of the South. I'm into everything Spanish. We go to Spain every year. I always regret that I can't speak the language. I want to learn Spanish in under 3 months. Sold. I imagine this is how most of you feel whenever you see my shred programs. So you're like totally sold. I'm in, right? So I went in, looked at it. Oh, you can watch a webinar. Fuck, I'm not watching a webinar. I immediately, because I know how online sales works, I immediately go onto the sales page and I zoom, flick down to the bottom to see the price. $3,000. So I'm like, $3,000 for a Spanish course. I'm like, okay, need a bit more consideration. Look through the sales page. How does it work? Yeah, video learning, things, whatever. Oh my God, access to a coach, anytime you want, like as part of the $3,000, like a Spanish coach. Holy shit. So I'm like clicking, looking amazing. And then, okay, so you can learn it in under, and he says he'll refund like 3 times your money if you're not amazing guarantee, if you're not fluent in under 3 months. Bing, bought it. $3,000. Take my money. I want it. So Ryan comes back from the gym and I was like, I just bought a Spanish course. And he goes, you bought a Spanish course? But I was only away for 20 minutes. And I said, I know, but I really, really want to learn. I want to learn Spanish. And this one is like, it guarantees fluency. How many times have we done this? I'm going to be shredded in 4 weeks. And your husband's like, yeah, right. Sure you are. So I was like, I'm going to speak Spanish in 3 months. And he was like, how much did it cost? I said, $3,000. He was like, you just spent $3,000. I was only gone for 20 minutes. How did you manage to spend $3,000? Like, where do you say I'm going to be fluent in 3 months? So anyway, Spanish course came through, looked at it, thought I'll do it Monday. So Monday came, right, Spanish course, opened it up. Oh shit, right, I have to watch the introduction. Oh fuck, right, I don't have time right now. Okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Tuesday came, Spanish course, right, looked into it. Okay, so even more complicated than I think. What do I have to do? Right, I'll watch the introduction. So I'm watching the introduction, my phone's pinging, my WhatsApp's going, oh shit, okay, I'm gonna have to maybe not do this when I'm in the office. So I'm forced myself. And then he goes, now I'm going to speak the rest of the time in Spanish. And you're going to have to, with subtitles, and this is part of the thing, it's immersion or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, in Spanish. And there's one phrase you have to learn right at the end of the thing. And you have to come away and it's like, I will speak Spanish at the end of 3 months. However you say that in Spanish. I don't know. And so I realized after I started the Spanish module, it's going to take a wee bit of time. It's going to take a wee bit of commitment, a wee bit of learning. Don't know why I thought it was going to be easier than it appears to be, but am I really going to commit to it right now? No, I'm not. So I looked at it and I was like, and I could have said I don't have the time, but I was like, I am just not willing to do what it takes right now to speak Spanish. And so then my husband would say to me every day, how's Spanish coming along? It's not, Ryan, haven't started it yet. He'd be like, oh really, haven't started yet? When are you going to start? Haven't decided, Ryan, when I'm going to start. So then my mum would be like, did you buy a Spanish course? How is it? Haven't started a Spanish course yet, Mum. Really? She's like, but I want to learn. I'm using Duolingo. So this Spanish course becomes like a real like fun talking point amongst the whole family. Came in her £3,000 Spanish course and she can't speak a word. She can't speak a word of Spanish. This is very much a case of I want to want it, right? I want to learn Spanish enough to motivate me to take the fucking course. Does that make sense? It's not, I want to learn Spanish. If I wanted to learn Spanish, I would be fluent by now 3 times over because I bought it like 9 months ago. I want to learn Spanish enough to motivate me to do it. But I don't want it enough to motivate me to do it. But you know what? I'm okay with that. I could say, oh my God, I'm such a shit person. I can't even show up for myself. Don't know what's wrong with me. I just keep back. Or I could like hide the fact, oh my God, I spent £3,000 in this thing. And every time my husband, or I could do it like just out of spite. I could like, well, I'm going to show him. He's not going to poke me on how expensive it was anymore, because like it violates his value. He's like, you don't spend money on something unless you're going to actually use it. But I'm not that kind of person, right? So, and I could have asked for a refund if I wanted within 14 days, but I was like, it's fine. I'll use it at some point, maybe. Maybe one day I might want to learn Spanish enough to do it. But at the minute, I don't. And you know what? I'm okay with that. And that's the key. You have to be okay with it. So every time he pokes me on it and he brings it up and everyone in the office brings it up, oh, what about your Spanish course, Kim? Your £3,000 Spanish course. And I bring it up actually more than anyone as a laughing point, because I'm not vested in what it means about me that I didn't do the Spanish course. I know it's a case of I want it. And it doesn't mean anything about me as a person. Did I fail? Yes. Does that mean I'm a bad person? No. It just means that I didn't have the data of what it would take in order to learn Spanish. Now, luckily, I'm rich. I can afford $3,000 on something that I haven't ever actually done. But so I didn't really make a considered decision when buying it. I could have got all the data before I made the decision if I didn't want to waste the $3,000. But I didn't, because I'm impulsive and I can afford to spend the $3,000. So I want it. That's the first one. Second reason the reason we sabotage is it's a values conflict. Okay. So there's two ways this happens. In the moment, you have two competing values pitted against each other. So you decide to choose one value over another, but get back in the proverbial horse as soon as possible without guilt or shame. An example of this is, I'm on a shred and being strict, but it's my husband's birthday and he wants me to celebrate with him. So today I decide to make my relationship with him more important than my shred. So I have a values conflict. I have a value of being shredded and following through, or, even if it's like, I've never, ever completed a shred, never done it perfectly. This time I'm going to show up for myself, but shit, it's my husband's birthday. Now I have two competing values. Which one's more important? Well, I'm going to take a night off to celebrate my husband's birthday because my relationship today is more important than my shred. But tomorrow I'm back on the shred and we move forward. The second example is, the second example is where you thought you wanted something and you started working towards it, but then realized in order to have it, you'd have to continually sacrifice something else that is more important to you. And you realize the sacrifice is not worth it, so you give it up completely. An example of this would be when I started horse riding again. So a lot of you know my horse story because you followed me. I got into horses again almost, it'll be 2 years ago this July, actually. 2 years ago, I bought my daughter a top class pony. I started riding the pony because he was a bit too strong for her. And then in a very short space of time, I bought myself another horse. So I built an extension on my mom's yard. I bought a horse lorry. I started competing again. So I made the decision to get into horses mindfully because I knew what it would take. I know what it takes to look after horses. So whenever I got back into competing horses, because I'd done it my whole life, I was able to look at, okay, what will it take in order for me to have to do this? And again, lucky I have money. So I was able to hire a full-time groom. I was able to, kit all the horses out with new saddles and new bridles, basically starting from scratch. So I was able to set up the yard in such a way that someone else would run it and look after the horses for me. But I still had to make time to ride the horses. And I didn't have any data on running a business and looking after a family and riding horses. Because when I rode horses years ago, I was a single girl at university and that's all I had to do was go to uni and ride my horses. So I had all the time in the world. So although I tried to set it up as much as possible with the data I had, once I added in this whole new facet to my life of horses, I hypothesized that I would be able to fit it in with everything else I had going on. But shortly after I started riding again every day or 4 to 5 days a week and training with my trainer, I realized something had to give because I couldn't do that and keep all the other balls in the air at the same time. Something had to give. And so I looked at the things that are the most important to me in my life, which is my husband, my family, my training, my business, and my horses. And I realized that something out of these had to give, either the business or the training or my family. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my business. I'm not willing to sacrifice my family because my business is what pays the bills and takes care of all the people who work for me. And my family is my family. So I realized I was going to have to sacrifice my training. But rather than give up training completely, in fact, I did December, not just there, but December in 2021, I actually did not train for an entire month because one of my grooms got COVID and I had to be at the horses every single day. And I realized I just couldn't fit training in. And so, but my training took a back seat. My gym training took a back seat for, I would say, a good 18 months where I just trained sporadically. I trained at home in my gym. I trained with Christina, who works with me. And then I trained by myself, and I've trained with Laura. I just fit training in wherever I could and whenever I could, but it wasn't a consistent 5 days a week priority in my life because it had to take a back seat. So this is just a values conflict. Now I could have said, oh my God, I can't believe, like, I don't know what is going on. I just can't, I just keep sabotaging myself. I keep saying I'm going to go to the gym in the morning and then not doing it. And I keep saying I'm going to go to, train legs with Mark and not doing it. And there were many times that I started back training legs with Mark. And then I realized this just isn't important enough to me to come over here and be sore. And there's just too much I have to sacrifice to do it. So I'm not going to do it. So I chose to allow this area of my life to be sacrificed because I wanted to fit these other things in. That's making a mindful decision. But a lot of people, whenever this happens in their life, they call it sabotage, or they beat themselves up, or they feel bad. They don't have the wherewithal to say, I have values and now I have a values conflict. And so people would say to me, oh, you're not training as much. I would say, no, I'm choosing not to at the minute because I have other things that are more important. How different does that feel to, no, I just don't have the time. We all have the time. You can't blame time. Her time gets the blame for everything. I'm choosing this value over this value. And the third way that we sabotage ourselves is disintegration. Fear is always a lack of data. So when you sabotage due to disintegration, it's usually one of two things. Either when you were little, you made one thing mean another that wasn't true because you had a lack of data due to an immature processing system. Example is, I need money to feel safe and secure. So I chose the easiest path to achieving this, getting pregnant with Ryan, and sabotaged myself from being successful in my own right. So those of you who showed up every day so far, you know the story. I sabotaged. I was building a successful business because I thought I needed money in order to feel safe and secure. And then as soon as Ryan came along and I got pregnant and I realized, oh, rich, successful man wants to take care of me. Great. Boom. I flipped to the other side of my crack because I thought this was the quickest and easiest way to get what I wanted. So ultimately I wanted to feel safe and secure and taken care of, but I felt this was the quickest way to do it. Or you have never done the thing before and it's scary because you don't know what to expect. The only way to get the data is to forge ahead. So whenever we're disintegrated and we recognize we're disintegrated and we go, oh, wow, I didn't even see I could choose that thing because that thing is so scary for me. Rather than saying, I'm just not going to do it. We say, well, I wonder what would happen if I did do it. If I just tried it and maybe you do it and the bad thing does happen, but maybe it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. Like maybe you put off making that phone call to someone because you don't want them to be angry with you. And then whenever you call them, they are angry with you and the bad thing did happen. But then afterwards you go, well, you know what? They were angry with me, but I'm really glad I made that phone call. And actually, I'm just going to do that again. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't do things because you're afraid of people being angry or you're a conflict avoider, the more you put yourself in conflicting situations or situations where there will be conflict, the more you will get data that you don't die. And the bad thing doesn't happen and you're still surviving and you're still standing and you're still a strong, independent woman. But now you're a strong, independent woman who's not a conflict avoider. And imagine how much better your life would be if you did not spend your life avoiding conflict. Another good example of this is like my daughter going out horse riding every week. She's 13 and I watch her every single week be terrified going out, not terrified, but every time she pushes herself into a bigger class or bigger show jumping, or she's doing her first international at the end of the month, she can sometimes be literally shaking with fight or flight before she goes into the ring, but she still goes. So she feels the fear and she does it anyway. So, and sometimes it's a disintegration. Sometimes she gets so fearful. And then I actually do a lot of sessions with her on her fears, which is great. She's lucky she has me. So sometimes it is a fear, but I watch her have her fears. Sometimes they're disintegrated fears and sometimes they're just fears from lack of data, but I watch her push through them every single day. And she's so inspiring to me. And then that thing becomes jumping that height of jumps becomes normal because she does it again and again and again and again and again. And that doesn't cause her fear. So she pushes herself to the next level. This is how we grow as human beings. Next time you encounter a situation that you would have considered self-sabotage, you can revisit this exercise and figure out which one it is. Is it really self-sabotage or is it just a case of I want it? Or is it a values conflict or is it disintegration? Once you have labeled it, you can make a decision on how to move forward. Where's the failure? Get the failure. Is it a physical failure? Is it emotional failure? What is stopping you from moving forward? You can make a considered decision and you can move forward. And this, my darlings, is how you overcome self-sabotage. This and all the stuff that I taught you earlier in the week. And I really hope that you're going to watch these modules. I'm going to go through an exercise with you now. One thing I want to say before we finish, or if we go through the exercise, is there's so much information here that I'm teaching you. These modules are designed to be done again and again and again and again and again. You would not hurt yourself if you listen to this 10 times. In fact, every single time you listen to it, you will get another piece of data, another piece of data, another piece of data. You will integrate more and more and more and more and more. These can become like a mantra for you to revisit. And because as you're sitting here watching these, I'm bringing up a state in you. So you're having a stimulus coming in, and I guarantee in your response, sometimes you've maybe had a fear, sometimes you felt emotional, sometimes you felt super motivated. You maybe come away from here and be like, yes, feeling so motivated. Like, this is amazing. I'm going to take this feeling forward forever. And so the great thing about what we're doing here is we're creating a stimulus response pattern. So if you ever feel unmotivated, you can put this on, you can go back and watch it again, and you can bring up that motivated state. So this can be the stimulus for your motivated state if you ever need it again. And that's the great thing about these masterclasses that we're doing. Okay, so here's your exercise. It's going to be in the PDF. Think of an area where you sabotaged yourself. In the example I used, I really wanted to learn Spanish. I bought an expensive online course, but every time I sat down to watch the modules, I got distracted or I didn't continue. I don't understand why I can't stick to a program because I've wanted to learn Spanish for the longest time. Number 2. Restate what you wrote above using the words I chose or I now realize. Example, I really wanted to learn Spanish. I bought an expensive online course, but every time I sat down to watch the modules, I got distracted or didn't continue. I now realize that I thought I wanted to learn Spanish, but when I understood how much work it was going to be, I realized that I don't want it as much as I thought I did. Using the examples above, number 3, what was the reason you decided to choose differently in that moment? Example, in this case, it was, I want it. I wanted to want to learn Spanish, but the reality is I don't want it enough. It's more effort than I'm willing to commit right now. The final step in this process is to forgive yourself. Write down how you forgive yourself and apologize to yourself for beating yourself up if this is what you did. Example, I choose to forgive myself for giving up Spanish lessons, and I'm sorry, Kim, that I made you feel guilty for this choice. I recognize that you're only doing the best you can in every moment, and if you could do better, you would. But your best is good enough for me, and it's all I can ask of you. Number 5, final step. Now, write a love letter to yourself and mean it. Example, Kim, I'm sorry for being so hard on you. I was just afraid that if I didn't punish and hurt you, you would never be better. But you are perfect just as you are, and I love you so much. Thank you for always being there for us. I appreciate you. It's really powerful if you do this for yourself. You have no idea, because you really just start to develop empathy for yourself. And you get out of the punish and blame mode. And then when other people punish and blame you, you realize that it doesn't mean anything about you. And you can say to them, you're probably right. You know, Kim, you shouldn't have spent $3,000 on a course you're not going to do. Probably right. Probably shouldn't have. It means nothing about me to be wrong. Nothing. This is how you overcome self-sabotage. The end. Who gave us the whoa? Was that Natalie? That sounded like a Natalie whoa. Haven't even looked at the chat today, but everyone's like, woohoo, woohoo. Do you guys enjoy this? Hopefully you did. I've loved teaching it, absolutely and utterly loved teaching it. Let me see the exercise again. Okay, anybody want to do one of the exercises before we finish? Run through the questions. We don't have to do the love letter at the end. That's kind of something which is personal if you don't want to. But if anybody wants to put up their hand and run, you don't have to if you don't want to. No pressure. I can just bring Laura on and put her in the hot seat on the hot seat. Laura's actually, Laura, do you have an area where you have sabotaged yourself?
Oh, let me see. Oh, many.
One you want to share? Could be something in the past that you've already thought about, or it can just be one that you've never thought about, but one that you might even have integrated it already.
Well, I would have binged it like the whole way through my bodybuilding preps when I was a competitive bodybuilder.
Okay. So can you think of one time when you binged?
Yes.
Okay. So tell me about it. What happened?
So I was at going to take my fitness classes and was telling myself in my mind that I wouldn't be able to take the fitness classes on the calories and the food that I was on, and I would die if I took this fitness class if I didn't have chocolate and sugar. And so I ran into like a fuel station and just stuffed like 5 chocolate bars into my mouth.
Oh my God, I love that one. Okay, so restate what happened with the words I chose or I now realize.
Yeah.
If you want help with that, I can help you. I would even say start off with I chose to believe, or I chose to tell myself.
Yeah, I chose to believe that I needed the chocolate and the sugar to not die. It's been very dramatic in my Zumba aqua class, and that and chose that I would eat 5 chocolate bars, even though I was like so committed to my goal to satisfy the urge.
Perfectly. And what do you now realize, if anything?
I now realize I just had like I just wanted to eat the chocolate, and I think I found like a reason, an excuse for it, which I was going to like latch onto.
You just wanted to feel better.
Yes.
It was hard, and also sounds like you did have data as to, you know, how tough it was, because I know how much energy it takes to teach classes. You know, I used to obviously teach a lot of yoga classes, and it does take a lot of energy to do that. And so it sounds like you just had a wee suffer and a wee pity party, and you just wanted to make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So using the examples above, what was the reason you decided to choose differently in that moment? Was it a case of, I want it? Was it a values conflict, or was it disintegration? Was it fear?
Ooh. I just feel like I need a bit of help in that one.
Yeah, I think it was a values conflict, because the thing about it was in that moment, you didn't recognize that you did have a very busy, active life as a self-employed fitness teacher. And you had a value of standing on stage and being shredded or being disciplined. Why did you want to do that, by the way? Why did you want to stand on stage? Why were you competing?
I think I just wanted to impress Curtis, honestly.
Right,
Even
that's
that
good.
was
That's
like,
so good.
I'd have value, like a lot of my bodybuilding was to do that. But yes, it was so important for me to do my job, and to like that was a conflict when I was doing bodybuilding, of the low energy but wanting to do a good job and still like take these really energetic and awesome classes at the same time.
Yeah, and I was prepped by your ex-husband as well, so I know that when you're prepped, I don't know whether Curtis prepped you or not, but you said that you always wrote the plans and then he pretended that it was him, but they were fucking hard, like you suffered. So I can imagine now looking at it from even going deeper with it, if you were doing a bodybuilding show because you wanted to impress him, it wasn't a value of yours. You were trying to do it to get something from someone else. whenever we do something because it's truly a value of ours and we know why we're doing it, it's much easier to stick to it, because we know that because sticking to it gives us something that can only come from us, like the self-belief, the consistent data that I'm the kind of person who shows up for myself. Like if you were like, I wanted to stand on stage because I wanted to prove to myself, why people who've lost a massive amount of weight, they say things like, I wanted to prove to myself I could do it. That's what you hear from people who've done things like climbed Mount Everest or, done like ultra marathons or whatever. They say, I wanted to prove to myself I could do it. When someone says I wanted to prove to myself I could do it, quite often you find that they've done it, because they know that by not doing it, they're only letting themselves down. But whenever you're doing something to impress someone else or to get something from someone else, whether that's recognition or whether it's, I want people to think I look great in this bikini, or I want my husband to love me, or I want this person to think well of me, whenever that's your motivation, because you're going for a feeling, your motivation is never going to be as strong as if you're going for something very solid within yourself. So in that moment, it feels like for me, it was a values conflict. It was I want to impress Curtis, and that's important to me because I'm in this relationship and I want to continue to be in this relationship because being in this relationship fulfills something inside of me. But right now I have a Zumba class to teach and I'm not feeling like I can bring my best self to it, and I need energy. And so my question would be, why would you not have allowed yourself the grace to have the chocolate to give you energy? Or if it was truly about energy, why would you not have said, oh, interesting, I didn't realize I was going to feel this way before Zumba classes. So, well, just giving another way you could have done it. I didn't realize that this was going to be so hard. So I think what I'm going to have to do is, write some kind of refeed into my plan before I have to teach, and make sure I have some oats that morning, or I allow myself some peanut butter, or that I move my schedule around so I have food before I go teach, like get the data kind of thing. And then, and then choose one, because at the minute you were just choosing comfort, which is a value. Comfort is a value.
Yes.
We're choosing comfort over kudos.
Yes. Yeah.
See what it means? You were having a values conflict.
Yeah.
But it's only by slowing it down and recognizing, well, what was I doing the show for? It was to impress Curtis. And what was I taking the Zumba class for? Well, because I needed to earn a living. So now you've got your value of your relationship over your value of earning a living, and these two things are pitted against each other. And this is how we make decisions a lot. And even just looking at it in that way and saying, okay, so how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? Well, I move my food around. Or I say I'm going to allow myself a chocolate bar before I teach, or I'm going to have a protein shake with a bit of a Targo, or given that now I've realized this is a limitation, how can I mitigate this, this risk in future without falling off the wagon and beating myself up? But you probably just pretended it didn't happen, did you? And just,
oh, no, I did the beat myself big stick. Beat myself up for it. But that feels so like, it feels so separated now into those choices. Whereas again, in that moment, it was just like feeling comes up and like edit away.
Yeah. And then you eat it away, you stuff it down, and then you don't go back and look at it again because you feel so guilty after it's happened that you don't even want to acknowledge it. But the problem is that once we keep acknowledging, tucking these things away and stuffing them down and controlling them, they just keep, it's like a game of whack-a-mole, where like whack-a-mole, once you pop one down, another one comes up, you pop that one down, another one comes up and you hit that one down. So this is what we're constantly doing whenever we're running from our failures rather than slowing them down, unpacking them and looking at them. And that, I think, is the biggest thing that I am trying to figure out, or trying to help you guys to figure out here, that I teach in my company every day. And thank you, Laura, for showing that example. It's just about failure isn't bad. Failure is just a lack of data. Failure, and when you fail, you now have data of where you're limited. So Laura shoved 5 chocolate bars in her mouth before a Zumba class, which was failure in terms of she had a bodybuilding goal and she had a macro and calorie counted plan that she was working on. And so what stopped her from sticking to that plan is failure. And the only way that you're ever really going to be successful in the long run is to not ignore your failures and pretend they don't exist, but to look at them and to unpack them and to open them up and to see what's inside. And sometimes it's scary, and sometimes it's stuff you've been hiding from you were a child. But if you don't truly, truly understand that failure is not only good, but necessary, then you will never transform it. Risha's asking, what if you fail on the same thing over and over and over and you have all the data and yet you keep failing? Well, then it's a choice, Risha. You're making a choice. You're not failing, you're choosing. But you're calling it failure because then by calling it failure, somehow it feels like if I try that on, if I keep saying, keep failing, I keep failing, I keep failing, it's almost like it's outside of my control. But if you keep failing again and again and again and again, then it becomes a choice. So especially if you know you're failing. Does that make sense? If you're getting consistent data that you're failing all the time, again and again and again, well, you're making the choice. So either it's a case of, it sounds like in that case, it's going to be a case of I want it. You want to want this thing, but you don't want it, because if you wanted it, you would figure out a way to make it happen. And so it's not that you won't fail, you will fail, and you'll fail a lot, but as long as you keep moving forward, you will eventually achieve success. I was talking about somebody recently who, well, there's different people in our programs, but there's people in our programs who do a program or do a shred and they go to here and then they fall off the wagon and then they eat and they put on weight again and they go, so say they start here and they go down to here, but then they get back on the wagon and they go up again to here and then they fall off the wagon and they go down to here. And then they get back on the wagon and go up to here and then they fall off the wagon and they go to here. So even though they feel that they're failing and failing and failing, over time, they've gone from here to here, right? Just doesn't feel like it was progress for them because they've gone up and then they've gone down, then they've gone up, then they've gone down. But every time they're going incrementally up further than they're going down. So they are actually succeeding towards their goals. It's just not a straight line. But success is never a straight line. There's always failure along the way. But the only way that you can ultimately fail to achieve your goal is if you allow yourself. And it's okay to allow yourself to fail sometimes, because sometimes, and that's what I'm trying to teach here, sometimes you look at it and you go, I thought I wanted it, but actually I don't. And then it's a case of figuring out, why is that bad? Because sometimes we're not ready to give up our self-image. Sometimes we have an image of ourselves that I am the kind of person who can stick to my goals and whatever. And Risha, from what you told me the other day about needing to be perfect, I would imagine that you're maybe not willing to give up on your idea of yourself as perfect. And so therefore you, in order to maintain your self-image, you have to say to yourself almost that you're continually striving for this thing. And it's not your fault that you're continuing to fail. You can't figure it out. You don't know what's wrong, but really inside there is like a whatever your visual of a slim fit, whatever fitness icon is, she's inside. You just haven't got there yet. Well, maybe you just don't actually really want it. That may not be true. You don't have to give me an answer, but it's just something to ask yourself. Like, what would be the worst part if you just said, you know what? I would love to be fit, but obviously not enough to actually make it happen. And I'm going to be okay with that. Sometimes it's about really being honest about what it is that we want. Guys, this was amazing. Another 2-hour session today. Would love to stay and take questions from the comments, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I would love for you guys to engage with me in the Facebook group. I would love you to write your questions in there, because if you put your questions in there, I can respond to your questions and then everyone can read the answers. And I know sometimes you want to be anonymous in there, and I get that. Unfortunately, it's really not possible to be anonymous in the Facebook group, but if I can respond with questions or with answers to your questions in there, everybody can read them, and then they create a reference point where people can go back and reference them in the future whenever they search for that topic. Also, I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I am going on vacation next week, so I'm not going to be available, but the week I get back, the following week, I am going to do some Q&As. I can't even tell you when they're going to be. I haven't scheduled them yet. I haven't looked at my calendar, but I am going to do some Q&As that week, live Q&As inside the private Facebook group, and you guys can ask questions. I may even do some more Zoom Q&As, and just for people who purchased this program, where we can do some kind of more, we can do some deeper work, but I definitely am not going to leave you high and dry. I want you to go and I want you to walk around with this information. I want you to try it on. I want you to implement it. I want you to see what comes up whenever you try. I want you to really start writing down, keep a notes section in your phone. I have a notes section in my phone where I write down all my fears, all my angers, everything that comes up. Oh, angry at my husband, write it down. Oh, scared whenever this person said this, write it down. Oh, start to work on all of your fears, all of your anger, all of your patterns, all of your limitations and the things that are holding you back. And then see what comes up as you start to move towards your goals. And then also what writing in the private Facebook group does for me is it gives me ideas of where you're all at collectively as a group, so I can shape future content. So what I even did before I wrote this module was, and I hadn't finished this module before today. So I only had an idea for it, but I wasn't sure how I was going to wrap up the week. But what I did was I went into the private Facebook group and I looked at all the questions and the comments and the things that people were saying and the questions they were asking. And that told me what it was that you guys needed to know today. So I don't always know where the content is going. I shape all of the content for the groups, for the programs, for the fitness programs, for this, from the content and the questions that I see in the Facebook group. So the more you can just pour it all out in there, the better it is for me to shape the content that you guys need, because I don't know that you need it if you don't ask for it. If you don't tell me where you are, you're not sharing your problems. So I would love it if you guys would do that. I just want to say a special thank you to my team for being here this week. You guys have been phenomenal, always supporting, always supportive, always just, you know, cheering me on from the sidelines when I'm in here with my door closed, beavering away on my computer. Do you want coffee? Can I bring you anything? You want water? They're all popping in and out. So thank you so much to all of my team for being so incredible. And for also, just want to give my team a wee shout out as well before we finish, to say to you guys that each and every person who works for me it's in the company as a full-time employee is working with a coach, working with a personal development coach on all of their fears, on all of their issues, on all of their disintegrations, on all of their sabotaging patterns. And it takes so much strength to do this work. And some of them were a little late starting than others because we had to give them a period of time to become comfortable with the way things worked around here, to realize we weren't going to punish them when they failed. You know who you are, but we're just glad that you're here now. And others were like, I'm here, sign me up. Like Laura took the job because personal development came as part of it. She was like, I'm here, sign me up, fucking throw me in. I just like, give me it all. So, but the more comfortable you become with your limitations, the more comfortable you become with who you are, the more humble you become, the less prideful you become. And the more you realize that all the ways you're limited don't mean anything about you as a person and you are perfect exactly as you are, the easier it is to just open up and share all of these deep and dirty parts of yourself that you think are bad and wrong, but that really aren't. You're just judging them yourself because you never learned as a child that they were actually part of you and they were perfectly okay and they were part of being human. So thank you guys for being so amazing. Thank you to all my team. Thank you to every single one of you who showed up here, purchased this program, trusted me, because there were really a lot of information as to what it was going to be. And I can't wait to support you all with your goals and your dreams in the future. And yeah, help you get where you want to go, because that's my life's mission, is to help everybody be happier and more purposeful and lead more joyful lives. And if that happens, I'm happy. Sending you all huge hugs and kisses. Mwah! Sending so much love your way. Thank you so much. Everybody give me a wave. Everyone be like, why? I love seeing everybody wave. It's so nice. And I will catch up with you guys in the private Facebook group, and I'll be back with a Q&A week, or a couple of Q&As week after next, and we will reconvene then. Okay. Bye guys. Love you all so much. See you later.